Hello, Attorney Prashanti.
Hello.
This is a question about the H-1B recapture. I see a lot of questions about H-1B recapture these days. I think people are, kind of, they have not filed their either 140s or they just, no perm. But then I think this is a straightforward question about how to claim for unused H-1B times or periods. For example, in 6 years of the H-1B period, one spent 200 days outside the US on vacation, family time, etc. So, how to reclaim? And I applied for the H-1B extension, and the USCIS approved the petition calculating 6 years from the initial first time approval only. So, there was no recapture. Can you clarify?
Yes. So if you have not used up the recapture time, so basically for those who don't know, recapture really means the person is using their time that they spent outside the US. So say in the last 6 years, you spent 1 year, 1 month every year. You have 6 months of time that you can recapture. So you can file an extension and you have to submit all the information with reference to your periods in and out of the country. You have to submit a list. It can be a Word document. There is also a place in the form to include how long you've been on a H1 for in the H1B supplement. And you also have to put in the best thing to do is would be to go to the I-94 website, and there's a detailed itinerary in the I-94 website. Once you put in your information, your passport number, it will show up all your dates of entry and exit into the US. And that is proof that you spent X number of days outside the US. And then your employer needs to prepare a cover letter. If there's an attorney, the attorney will prepare a cover letter specifically saying that the unused period of time is being used here. So the period that you were outside the country is being used in this petition, and they will give a calculation and a table in the cover letter itself. So that's how you would use or reclaim the period that you've been outside the country.
But in one of the cases, if you remember, you worked with our company where the candidate lost his passports, and I think 15 years he's been. He only spent 3 years in the last 15 years. Now, what is the alternative if they don't have copies of, say, passports, entry exit stamps, or the data is not available on the CBP website itself? There is a possibility certain times that they can't, pull this type of data. Now, are there any alternatives that you can suggest?
So there are two ways, direct ways. One is, of course, the passport stamps from the passport. If the passport is lost, um, then you would use the I-94 website. If that is not appearing, then you would contact CBP and try to get that information from CBP with the arrival and exit dates.
So is it possible to go, get an appointment, field office, or the airport of the CBP, and meet them in person and gather this data?
During COVID, it depends. That keeps changing. The process keeps changing. During COVID, it was not possible. But in general, yes, if there is a correction in your I-94 or if your I-94 records needs to be corrected, there is a number to call, and you have to call the CBP where you entered into the US last, and they should be able to help you. But of course, it varies from case by case.
So is there a fee associated for this type of collection of data from CBP, or it's
Unless you're doing a FOIA, you could do a FOIA under the Freedom of Information Act. And in case you do a FOIA, then of course there is a fee associated with it. There's a form associated with it. There is processing time associated with it. So it's possible that you could do a FOIA um, to CBP or to USCIS to see if they have your I-94. Or you can just, and then there's a fee. But if you're just approaching CBP, then there's no fee associated with it.
I still have a crazy follow-up question. Now, when we said the recapture, is it like lifetime? For example, somebody had an H1 25 years ago, and he was here for a year, he or she. Now they want to come back because we do get these type of inquiries. People want to come back after like 25 years. Can I still use my previous H1B without subject to the lottery? And if they had any remainder time, can they still do this, say after a long period of like 20, 25 years?
So you're recapturing the time that you spent in the last 6 years within that last term, not 50 years ago or 20 years ago. What we are seeking to do is recapture the time spent during that term of your 6 year H1. So it has to be specific to that 6 year period that your H1B was valid. Because
So,
anyway, if you leave the country, for say, and you have another term, so that what you're saying, the example may not happen because number one, if you leave the country and stay outside for 1 year, you get a fresh 6 year term. So there's no need to recapture.
and without subject to the lottery?
It is not cap exempt because if you're making use of the 1 year, that's a different question. So we're answering several questions in one question. But yes, if it is you're using the 1 year period, then you're subject to the lottery, of course. But you can only use the time spent outside the country within that 6 year period of time. And if you have an I-140 approved, then there is no need to really recapture any time. And presumably, if you've spent so many years in the country, you might already have an I-140 approved. So then that becomes null and void. So to directly answer your question, you have to only look at the 6 year period.
All right. Thank you for answering that question.